hello, Mr. Spielberg. Good morning.
My
And
fellow filmmaker.
oh, thank you so much, Mr. Spielberg. It's just an precious few minutes for me. And I saw your film last evening. It was just so nostalgic for me because I have performed this play also when I was young and in my
Ah,
theater days.
wow.
So, so I was reliving every moment. Um, so as a, I quickly get into the jump into it that, as a director, I just want to check with you that have you come a complete full circle as a filmmaker, touching upon musical, finally touching upon a genre that you have not touched?
Well, this is a genre that's been close to my heart all my life. It just took West Side Story to get me to do a musical. I don't think there's any other musical I would have done except West Side Story because it's been relevant in my life since my parents bought the original Broadway cast album when I was 10 years old, and brought it home, and I listened to it and wore it out. And I have been sort of building, I've been sort of banking my courage, letting every movie I've made give me a little more courage until finally I could pop the question and ask those four estates if I could marry them and be able to reimagine, the work of those four geniuses, Sondheim, Bernstein,
Yes.
Lawrence, and Robbins, and so this was something that took, I wouldn't have done this if I hadn't loved the musical idiom as much as I do.
Oh, that's so. Musicals are not easy to do. I mean,
No.
I would not touch upon musical at all. I mean, and I'm scared of it. I mean, either you have to have a music in you, or you acquire, or
Yeah,
so.
my mom is musical. My mom was a concert pianist. So I was raised with music ever since I was born, but not popular music. I was raised with Chopin and Beethoven and Brahms and Bach and all the classical composers. So that was basically my education was in classical music. When I heard West Side Story for the first time, it was a popularized version to me of classical music because I thought that the main themes were very classical, but I could remember the themes. I don't remember all of Beethoven, but I can remember all of Bernstein, and it just stuck in my head as a kid, and I never forgot those themes.
I know. I, I felt when I was watching the film that it must be such a task to mix the theater and cinema, to be theatrical and then get the cinematic, insight into it. It must be, and the way you have put it, and it's a really a big scale production. It felt like in this New York City. So I think that challenge, I'm also trying to do a musical sometime, but I'm not getting the courage that you had. But I felt you become more fearless.
Well, I think as I'm older, everybody when they're older gets more fearless. Maybe not everybody, but I certainly needed to be fearless in order to take this on because this is obviously based on on the great Broadway musical, but it will be liberally compared to the 1961 film. Both the 61 film and the Broadway musical both owe a huge debt of gratitude to William Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet. So I didn't feel like I was violating anything because I don't really necessarily love remakes, but I didn't consider this a remake. I considered this a reimagined, more authentic and more contemporary version of the original musical. And it also what gave me courage was that this musical, West Side Story, which is arguably the greatest American musical, and I think Porgy and Bess is the greatest American opera ever written for the American stage. But I think this musical has been performed thousands of times in community theater, in high schools, in colleges, in revivals all over the world, in New York, Los Angeles, in Tokyo, as recently as a year and a half ago. And I felt that because it is so liberally reproduced again and again, every new cast brings a different interpretation. They may say the same lines because they're by contract forced to say the same lines that was originally written in the 1950s, but they're able to interpret those lines in a new modern way. and just based on how many times Romeo and Juliet has been a film, how many times can you
Right.
count that that's been a film? I didn't feel like I was violating the great classic that the original West Side Story film was by telling this 2021 version of a 1957 story.
Yes, of course. I mean, it something must have compelled you from inside to really touch upon this subject in this present modern generation. And uh, like I saw a lot of talented Hispanic and Latino community. I felt this itself is a as a big statement in this present world
Yes,
where we are living. So I
true.
think that statement is so important for a director to make a conscious effort to and bring it forth in this world that of xenophobia and racism where we are living in. So I think that interpretation I felt very strongly when I was watching.
Oh, thank you, because it was very important to me that this film represent the Latinx community, that there's not a single Puerto Rican character that is not played by a Latinx performing artist. And as a matter of fact, 20 of our artists in this are either Puerto Rican or of Puerto Rican descent, including Rita Moreno and Ariana DeBose and Josh, who plays Chino. We have so we had 50 actors who had never made a film before, ever. That was really amazing to have that
Yes.
responsibility. That was fun too. But it was very important that this was authentically because if I started this movie by basically making a promise that only Latinx descendants of Latinx countries and cultures would play the sharks, the girls and the boys, that everything else had to be equally authentic.
Right. And I did like my last film, and in that last film, one of the protagonists speaks that youth is a gift of God, and either you give it a meaningful purpose or you just wither it out. Do you think youth can really bring change? And this film, I felt very strongly, it addresses the youth. It's a conversation of Mr. Spielberg with the youth straight, directly.
It is. It's a direct conversation and dialogue with the young people all over the world today. And we intended that to be a conversation with them. I also feel that, the world that all of my generation is in our, I wouldn't call it twilight years because I still feel like a 40-year-old. But I just feel that it's this generation that's going to determine the fate of all of us. And it's how they're influenced and what influences them. And if they can start a conversation with people who are different than they are, if xenophobia someday can be in our rearview mirror and not in our present day vernacular, and I think all of that is going to be accomplished by several new generations of young people who really care about each other. And if empathy continues to die, then everything dies along with it, including democracy. And I really feel that the secret ingredient in all of this is trying to find or rediscover empathy.
Oh yes, empathy, kindness, and getting over the social evil that you have. What I saw in the film, I was reliving every moment of Jets and Sharks and Maria and all of them. In India we have more or less every film is a musical, some song and dance.
I know. But you're very smart, because I'll tell you why it's very smart. It is selling a story through the fastest way to our hearts. And what's the fastest way into our hearts? Is music and dance.
Of course.
Nothing reaches us more profoundly than if we're carried off somewhere that we never expected to go by a piece of music.
Right, absolutely. One last thing to ask you as a filmmaker, which I have always been wanting to. You've done so many genres, entertainers, of course, they're all box office and everything. Do you think you have reached a stage where you now can dictate terms in terms of your conscience, that how you want to make a films, future of other films, which can really affect and change the world, and really make it a place where there's no discrimination or racism. I mean, filmmakers beautiful world, we always want that perfect world, and I'm seeing in every film that you're coming from your last, that you're possibly reaching that, now you're hitting directly into that world that you want to create.
Well, I hope I've been doing that all my career. I hope I've been telling stories my whole career that has, brought people together of different ideologies, but people all coming together under one roof to see one story told to them. And they don't know each other. They're perfect strangers to one another. And they probably don't even agree with each other, but somehow they get into a kind of communal agreement about the story that's being told to them, and they all walk out feeling the same way. If it works, if it's successful, they all walk out feeling the same way. So I think film and the arts are a great unifier, and I think I've been doing that my whole career.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I mean, I can't thank myself. Thank you for being part of this conversation.
Oh, I
And
love
it
talking
just
to you.
it was just brilliant few minutes of my precious, whatever time I spent with you. Thank you so much, and I really wish best of luck. And I'm going to talk to all my friends who have all because I have read the play and I've performed the play. So I think it's beautiful, And thank you for this conversation.
I thank you for the conversation. You made me very happy. Thank you.
Thank you.